Welcome to Comment with me, George Galloway, here on Press TV, still the voice of the voiceless. This is the big conversation, this is the great debate. But it can only be a debate if you join in. That's why, above all, I need your telephone calls. If you call us, we'll call you back. Establish a clear line. The number is 44-208-601-4555. Let me give you that again. 44-208-601-4555. You call us, we'll call you back. And remember, if you get on the television with me, the volume on your television has to be at 0, or no one will understand either of us, and I'll have to move swiftly on. You can also SMS the show on 447800008066, or you can email me at comment@presstv.co.uk. And don't forget that we're on Twitter, and you can communicate with us that way too. Comment_Press TV. Comment_Press TV. Now, tonight we're discussing Pakistan in the wake of a series of murderous, nihilistic, insane mass murder. And the method has been tried and tested, of course, and seen in many other places, not the least of them in Syria. Bombs on trains. Bombs at fruit and vegetable markets. 2 doctors were murdered in Karachi only because they were Shiite. This mass murder is proceeding across Pakistan, and the state seems absolutely powerless to stop it. And if you look at the bomb in Islamabad, in which more than 20 people died and dozens, maybe scores, were horrifically injured in the fruit and vegetable market, you can see not just that the target is absolutely, utterly, by definition, indiscriminate, it is also targeted at the very poorest people in the country. The people who have nothing to do with the politics of Pakistan, who are powerless to affect the politics of Pakistan, but who were cut down and murdered by the bomb that was planted there. It's an open-air fruit and vegetable market. By definition, the people shopping there are the poorest people, and yet they were murdered. The people on the train, the bomb for which responsibility was chosen by a Baluchi separatist organization seeking to break up Pakistan. Similar so-called armies exist in Iran also, terrorists that are funded by and supported by Western countries, at least in Iran. Who knows who's supporting who in Pakistan and for what purpose? Baluchistan is a very mineral and oil-rich, probably gas-rich also, part of the country, but it cannot be explored properly, it cannot be exploited for the benefit of all the people of Pakistan because of the completely ungovernable security situation there. I myself intended to travel across Baluchistan to try to bring a convoy to occupied Kashmir earlier this year, late last year, but we had to cancel it because we had no doubt, and the state had no doubt, that we were probably going to be murdered if we did. How can Pakistan protect its people? I really don't know the answer to that. The Pakistan state is weak and enfeebled for a number of reasons. Military dictatorship over decades, half almost of the lifetime of Pakistan has been spent under generals and military juntas. The orientation of the state of Pakistan towards the United States of America, with its occupation in neighboring Afghanistan and its full participation in the so-called war on terror, has alienated the state from very large numbers of its people. The fact that Pakistan is widely held to be complicit in the United States bombing of its own country, its own people, by drones and other military incursions. And of course, the presence in the country of fanatic clerics who wish to persuade the faithful that the road to heaven can somehow be paved with the bodies of people from minority sects and minority religions. I don't know how we can resolve that. I don't know if the state of Pakistan is able to resolve it. The government of Pakistan is able to resolve it. Let's discuss it this evening. And is the cancellation by Tzipi Livni of the release of Palestinian prisoners as some kind of retaliation for the failure of the Palestinian leadership to roll over, because Tzipi Livni likes Palestinian leaders to roll over, and they cancelled the release of a batch of Palestinian prisoners, causing a total existential crisis to the so-called peace process, which is an endless process, but absolutely no peace. And the question is, have they deliberately created this crisis? And predictably, absolutely predictably, the Palestinian resistance organization, Islamic Jihad, has just announced that it and others are going to try and snatch Israeli soldiers and bargain with them for the release of the thousands of Palestinian prisoners still in the dungeons of the Zionist state, including those who have been promised their release, and including Palestine's Nelson Mandela, the great leader Marwan Barghouti. So, the release of Palestinian prisoners is the cancellation of that release by Israel, causing a crisis. Is it deliberate? This follows, of course, John Kerry's statement in the United Arab Emirates about a week ago, in which he said that the talks in Washington were close to collapse and that the United States may have to disengage from them. And the reason why the talks are close to collapse is that whilst the talking is going on, Israel is continuing illegally to build settlements in the occupied territories and in annexed Jerusalem. In the Arab quarters of Jerusalem, they have cut off the water supply. They have deliberately set out on a policy of ethnic cleansing, the Judaization of Jerusalem, the driving out of Arabs and Muslims from Jerusalem, all in advance of final status talks that probably will never be reached, at least not in the foreseeable future. Let's talk about these subjects. Mohammed's in South Wales, always worth hearing. Mohammed, thanks for ringing. Go ahead, sir.
Assalamu alaikum to you, George.
Wa alaikum salam, thank you.
Good, good. Right, I mean, let me just give you a little background with Pakistan, right?
Yeah.
Well, I was only about youth then, about 17, 18, I think, when General Zalhak came in power for 19 days when he toppled the government.
Yes.
Right? He is the biggest, he was the biggest cause of this Taliban or this Wahhabism sect came to Pakistan. Because at this period, he only came for 19 days and he was going to hold elections. And he stayed, I think, over 9 or 12 years. Right? And in that time, he built so many madrasas, Wahhabi madrasas in Pakistan with the funding of Saudi Arabia. And now we are paying the consequences of these, Taliban madrasas, that's what I call them. In each madrasa in Pakistan, Wahhabi madrasas, you see ammunitions. Well, remember the Red Mosque event, right? There was so much ammunition came out of that madrasa. Are we teaching Islam or are we teaching terrorism, right, in these madrasas? What is the Pakistan? We got the #1 secret service in the world, ISI, right? This is what everybody says, right? No, they know what's happening in Pakistan, okay? And basically, it's sad what the Saudi Arabia, so-called Muslim protectors of the world, or the head of the Islamic Ummah, that's what they like to call themselves, but they are the biggest enemy of Islam in this. I'm not fear of America, to be honest with you, or Britain or Europe. I'm more fear of Saudi Arabia because of what their teaching are being taught in these madrasas, right? Kill, doesn't matter who they are, kill these Shia people. Shia people are just human beings like any other, right? When we go to the Hajj, when we perform our Hajj at Arafat, the night we spend there, we cannot take a leaf of a tree because that contains life, Now, Allah says in the Quran, life is so valuable, right? Now, how can these people teach these mullahs, so-called mullahs, I call them terrorists, right, with their long beards and their salwars up their backside, okay, teaching about Islamic faith, right? There is no way in Islam. I don't call them Muslim.
So how do you think this can be resolved, Mohammed?
The only way we can resolve it, George, to be honest with you, is if our military, right, and our government do not get any money back pocket, because when you start eating haram money, unlawful money, right, in the Quran it states, if what you eat is what you produce, right? So if I eat haram, meaning unlawful way of earning money, my children will be born, right, of this kind of a haram way of thinking, unlawful way of...
Mohammed, thanks for getting us off to a flying start on that. I do need to make one or two points. First of all, the Pakistan Taliban, which has carried out these kinds of atrocities before, are adamant that they were not involved in the attack on the fruit and vegetable market in Islamabad. Indeed, they're in talks now with the Pakistan government, seeking to resolve the bloody conflict in which they have been engaged. The train was not by Wahhabis, but by separatists, by people seeking to break up Pakistan. And of course, there are many people who are involved and have an interest in the breakup of Pakistan. The Indian intelligence agencies, RAW, they have an interest in doing so. The gangster mafia chief in Edgware, outside London, the head of the so-called MQM, he has an interest in breaking up Pakistan. Indeed, almost daily calls for that breakup. And there could be others. But the mass murder on the train and the mass murder in the market are hallmarks of this nihilistic violence that in Syria is undoubtedly being carried out in the name of this extraordinary and very, very narrow interpretation of Islam, which somehow teaches people that you can get to heaven by murdering other people, even other Muslims, never mind any other religions. Mohammed, thanks for the call. Derek is on the line from Palestine, occupied Palestine. Derek, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Go ahead, sir.
Okay, well, just two different comments. One on Pakistan. I think before you look at a solution to the problem, I think you should look at the cause of the problem. And I think it would be who is causing the problems. Everybody knows that one of the British tactics has always been divide and conquer. And I think that could be part of what's actually happening in Palestine or in Pakistan at the moment. You have a situation where they're dividing between the Sunni and the Shia and between the Christians. And they're trying to divide the country, like you were saying, divide the country up and make it that they can influence policy much easier. And I think this is the problem in Pakistan at the moment. You have this situation where outside influences are trying to cause problems and then they can dictate policy within the country.
Okay, tell me something about the crisis now where you are in occupied Palestine, Derek.
Well, I'm in Gaza at the moment, and just as I was hanging on the phone for you, we lost power. This is a regular thing here in Gaza. We have power again until tomorrow. But the situation in Palestine at the moment, you've had a situation where the Israelis refused to release the prisoners, even though they said they would. And I think this is a deliberate tactic to sabotage the peace talks. Because one thing the Israelis do not want and have never wanted is definite borders. They have never claimed, they are the only country in the world that has not defined their borders. And they continuously move them into Palestine, Lebanon, Syria, and even part of Saudi Arabia, which most people don't even know that they occupy islands off Saudi Arabia. And this is their tactic, is to refuse to negotiate, and as long as they are not negotiating, then they can occupy more and more land. Even today, they have announced that they're going to occupy more, or that they are taking more land in Bethlehem.
Well,
so
of course, Derek, even while they've been negotiating, they have continued to take more and more land. It's not that they are not prepared to negotiate, it's that they're not prepared to reach a conclusion to those negotiations. In fact, endless talks, meaningless, resultless talks are their stock in trade. Derek, take care of yourself in Gaza. Izza is on the line from Nigeria. Izza, welcome to the show. Izza, are you there? No, we lost that. We're talking about the crisis that has been created. Seems that there's always a crisis, but been created by the decision announced by Tzipi Livni, but on behalf of Netanyahu, that the promise that they made to induce the Palestinian negotiators to go to Washington, a promise that was underwritten by the government of the United States, has been unilaterally broken. They will not now free those prisoners, creating a real crisis and a real motive to Palestinian resistance organizations to seize Israeli soldiers and trade them for a far larger number of Palestinian prisoners. Izza is on the line. We've finally got him back in Nigeria. Go ahead, sir.
Hello, George. Good evening.
Good evening to you, sir. Go ahead.
Okay. I want to speak a little bit about the issue in Pakistan.
Yeah.
It's an issue of impunity, the level of impunity that's going on there. I understand that the group, the Lashkar and Jangwi, which are based in the Lahore, probably they have the sympathy of the government. And the issue, between the Shia and the Sunni Muslims, it's not something that can be resolved with violence. There must be this point where the two groups or the two, school of thought should find a way to coexist as one. Back here in Nigeria, there is an issue of the Boko Haram, which is these are time bombs, that have existed over the years. So the issue of the Lashkar and Jangwi, and the annihilation of the Shiite Muslims, it's not an issue that can be resolved, with killings. There has to be a point where, government should step in, and government should not have for any group, whether you are a Shiite Muslim or you are a Sunni Muslim or whatever. And also there is the issue of Taliban in Pakistan. Taliban have, the sympathy of some Pakistani citizens. So the government has to come in, the institutions of government, the police and the security agencies should make sure that people who commit crime against humanity are brought to book.
Well, look, Ezra, we have to... thanks for that call, brother. We have to get our terms and our chronology and history correct here. The Pakistan intelligence agencies, ISI in particular, created the Taliban. They created the Taliban to go into Afghanistan to try to bring an end to the absolute mayhem and murder and total destruction that became Afghanistan after the withdrawal of the Soviet Union and the murder of President Najibullah. People aping the Afghan Taliban then emerged in Pakistan, inevitably. The creation of the Taliban was bound to have its echo inside the borders of Pakistan. The government of Pakistan has been following, under all parties, a pro-American war on terror strategy, including collaborating with the United States in the bombing of their own country. I mean, in Catch-22, the great novel, peerless novel, the commander, Milo Minderbender, rents out his own air force to bomb his own soldiers in order to make some money from it. It was extremely funny, deepest satire, but it's actually happening in Pakistan. The government of Pakistan is encouraging and facilitating attacks on their own country by the United States of America that it continues to insist is its closest ally. So the policy of governments of Pakistan is deeply flawed and bound to lead to greater support for this Pakistan Taliban. But I repeat myself, I don't believe that the attack in Islamabad was the Pakistan Taliban. I know that the attack on the train in Baluchistan was not the work of the Taliban. Neither had it anything to do with sectarianism. Neither did the bomb in Islamabad have anything to do with sectarianism. This was just mass murder in a simply unfathomable kind, attacking the very poorest of your own people for no discernible political purpose at all, which makes me think that there may be more to at least the Islamabad bombing than currently meets the eye. Farida is in London. How can Pakistan protect its people, Farida?
Yes.
Go ahead, sister.
Hello, George.
Yes, you're on the air.
Good evening, George.
Good evening, madam. Go ahead.
The atrocities that are being committed in Pakistan on daily basis, George. Can you hear me?
Yes, definitely.
Right. I know that as the government of Pakistan is in dire economic crisis, and the money that is being poured into Pakistan on whatever basis is being used by the ministers to just follow their own agenda. And the talks that they were supposed to be having with the Taliban have failed miserably. Saudi Arabia is now putting more money into Pakistan, in fact asking for the Pakistani troops to help Saudi Arabia out with its own agenda. I'm afraid, to me, it seems that the government of Pakistan is for sale. You can buy the ministers, you can buy the defense ministers, and they will accept money on any terms. And if it means putting their own people at risk, I am afraid that the mess that these governments have created for the ordinary Pakistani on the streets is, I cannot forgive these people for bringing this kind of misery to their own people.
Well, and Farida, I don't know if they're for sale, but they're definitely for rent. In Bahrain, where the democracy protesters are being gunned down and tortured, Pakistanis are deeply involved in that crime. As you say, Saudi Arabia has pressed not only that Pakistan soldiers should come to Saudi Arabia to protect Saudi Arabia from God knows whom, but has also encouraged Pakistan to send forces, regular or irregular, into the mall in Syria, where this method of indiscriminate mass murder is, of course, not just an everyday occurrence, but every hour of everyday occurrence. There's no doubt in my mind that money changes hands between the United States and leading political figures in Pakistan in connection with the drone attacks on Pakistan. It's hard to see any other reason why political leaders would agree to a foreign country bombing them and then continue to claim that that foreign country that's bombing them is their close ally. A strategic choice was made by Zia-ul-Haq to turn to the United States, away from the special relationship that Pakistan had with China, its neighbor. It was a profound error of judgment. Now look, I need to take a break for 3 minutes so that you can hear the news headlines. Remember, we're discussing the crisis that Israel has created over the issue of prisoners and whether Pakistan can do anything to protect its people from the wave of murderous violence that's going on there. Don't go away. God willing, I'll be back here in just 3 minutes' time. Welcome back to Comment with me, George Galloway, here on Press TV. Definitely still the voice of the voiceless. Comment is the big conversation. It's the great debate. But it can only be if you join in. That's why I need your calls, your SMS, your emails, and even now your Twitter. So please get busy. Tonight we're discussing the crisis in Palestine, caused at least proximately by the decision announced by that paragon of ill virtue, Zippy Livni, that the promised release of Palestinian prisoners would not now take place, even though that was one of the important bases on which the Palestinian Authority went to Washington for these long and fruitless negotiations in the first place. The resistance group Islamic Jihad has announced that it is now on the lookout for Israeli soldiers to snatch and exchange for those prisoners. Another Shalit affair would appear perhaps to be in the offing. And of course, every day of every week, Israel continues to commit crimes against international law and against humanity. The continuing paving over the occupied territories is well known around the world, and nobody lifts a finger to stop it. Every week, it appears, Israel announces hundreds of more units for settlers in occupied Palestinian land, and still they're subject to no sanction or punishment of any kind. And the ethnic cleansing of Jerusalem has been proceeding apace for a long time, but has now reached the extraordinary situation where for more than a month, all water to the Palestinian residents in Jerusalem has been cut off. Can you imagine if any other country willfully cut off water supplies to people living under its military occupation? Can you imagine the trouble that that would cause in the world? Can you imagine the Security Council? Can you imagine all the talk of cuts and sanctions that would inevitably ensue? Imagine if Russia were to cut off essential supplies to parts of its country because of its policy towards those parts of the country. We would never hear the end of it. Yet nobody, even I, did not know until this evening that for an entire month, Jerusalem Arab Palestinian residents have been cut off of all water. It's really unbelievable. Baz is in Los Angeles. Well, Baz, it's good to hear from you again. Is Israel deliberately causing a crisis?
Hi, George. Thanks for having me on again.
Great to hear from you. Go on.
Well, we can speak for hours about the nuances. We can speak for, 60 years of nuances about what's happening between Israel and the Palestinians. But, again, the main point of all this is that Israel doesn't want peace. It doesn't want a Palestinian state. It wants land. It wants all the land from its current border all the way to Jordan, and it wants to ethnically cleanse all that land of any Arab and any Palestinian. So, there's really not much more to say about it beyond that. What's happening now in East Jerusalem, I think, is just, a strategy to kind of Gazify that area.
Yeah.
There's been a drought recently in that part of the world, and they're trying to divert the water resources to their own settlements.
Do you know, Baz, that 1 mile from East Jerusalem, just 1 mile, in Ma'ale Adumim, which they call a settlement, but which is in fact like Beverly Hills, the water sprinklers for the lawns and the beautiful flowers and the deep and beautiful swimming pools are going full scale. There's absolutely no reduction at all in water consumption in illegal settlements, not 1 mile from the pictures that you've just seen of the Jerusalem residents without water at all. Do you know?
Well, yeah, that's exactly right. But there's plenty of water for the people in Gaza, too. There's plenty of water for everybody. But as part of their long-term plan is, they want these people to leave. So they've basically turned Gaza and now it looks like Eastern Jerusalem into a kind of Warsaw ghetto to inflict so much misery on these people, to either get them to leave willingly or, they're perfectly happy to have them wither away and die in any way. I mean, their ultimate strategy is to get rid of these people.
Well,
so one way or another, they've got to go.
The comparison you make, Baz, is an extremely powerful one. It's a controversial one, but I believe it's an accurate one. What
I
else
know that,
is,
George. That's why I said it. This is a very dire situation.
What else?
What other comparison can we make?
Exactly. What else is Gaza but a Warsaw ghetto? And when the people, the heroes of the uprising of the Warsaw ghetto, who decided they'd rather die on their feet than live on their knees, desperate for food and water, rose up and tackled their besiegers, those who were keeping them in that Warsaw ghetto. They were rightly hailed and are remembered in history as freedom fighters, as heroes. Yet the Palestinians, when they rise up out of their Warsaw ghetto, are called terrorists in your country and in my country, never mind in the country that's doing the besieging.
Well, it's a crime against humanity, George. There's no other way to describe it. I can't comprehend the misery that those people have been undergoing for all these last decades. No food, no water. That the Israelis have basically put them on a daily calorie count, only letting enough food from the UN to go in to keep these people barely alive.
Yeah.
No proper sewage. No electricity. How can we live like that? I mean, I'd ask the people in the United States, in the UK, in Western Europe, or anywhere else in the world to live like that just for one day.
Well, Baz, the United Nations said about a month ago, maybe two, that Gaza was close to being unfit for human habitation. The question is, what are they doing about it? Nothing.
That's right, George. It just makes me sad to be part of, this kind of behavior,
And I've got to add a postscript, Baz. The junta in Egypt have decided to compound all of this misery by locking the gates, destroying the tunnels, doing Israel's work in murdering the Palestinians, nearly 2 million of them, in Gaza.
Make a comment about Egypt, George.
Yeah, go on.
The Egyptian people thought that they had been successful in overthrowing their dictator. And the wool has been pulled over their eyes because the United States has basically replaced one dictator for another. And they're no different. They've replaced one Caesar for another.
And
so the
Baz,
Egyptian people...
Baz, more fool those idiots who, in the name of secularism or leftism, supported this junta coming to power and pretending that somehow a new Nasser had arrived on the scene. Nasser was ready to die to liberate the Palestinian people. These people in this junta are doing Israel's work in murdering the Palestinian people in Gaza.
Money has a strange effect on people, George. U.S. dollars, and, like I said, they replaced one Mubarak for another, a different face, a different name, but it's basically business as usual.
Baz, a pleasure to talk to you, as always, out there in Los Angeles. Let's go to Malta. Mario is there. Mario, is Israel deliberately causing this crisis?
Hello, George. How are you?
By the grace of God, I'm good. Go ahead, sir.
All right. Look, you know what I think, George? Pakistan can't do nothing because she's deep down in hell, I think we should do something. European, England, France, Germany, the people should go against their own government and tell them to stop protest, Stop. It can't still go on like this. Children dying, like you just said now, you know. Why? Because of Israel. That is Israel and the Saudis. These are the worst dictators in the world, you know. Why? We should protest, go against your government in England, Cameron or Obama. What is kind of people these people?
Mario, great call, powerful and emotional as always. Thank you for it. Just across the water in Lebanon from Malta, Herhach is on the line. Herhach, welcome.
Hello.
Yes, go ahead, sir. You're on the air.
Good evening, Mr. George.
Good evening to you.
For the Palestinians, I am seeing whatever the Americans did to the Indians, the same thing the Jews are doing to the Palestinian people. Imagine what kind of Palestinian people they are living in their own country in camps.
Yeah.
Like you see, this camp and that camp and that camp in their own country. Second of all, for the prisoners' release. Every day they are taking more prisoners than they are releasing them.
Yeah.
What kind of joke is that?
Yeah. And now they're not even releasing them.
They are not releasing them. And now they were asking that spy from the United States to release the prisoners. What's that got to do with this one?
Exactly. Yeah, one of their demands is the release of an Israeli spy imprisoned by the United States for spying on the United States, which pays all of their bills. What does that have to do with the Palestinians? It's a totally absurd condition that they have raised. Great to hear from you. In Lebanon, we're talking about Israel, Palestine. We're talking about Pakistan and the security crisis there. Bani Mustafazi is in Sweden. Go ahead, sir. And the security crisis there. Bani Mustafazi. Yes, are you there in Sweden?
Yes, good evening, Mr. Galloway.
Good evening, sir. Go ahead, please.
Not Sweden. I'm in Switzerland, in Geneva, next to...
In Switzerland. We've got that wrong. Please forgive me.
United Nations, yes. Unfortunately, it's not executive United Nations here. However, I wonder why we are all surprised, first of all, about the Shiism that they are getting killed for many, many years all over the world. And Pakistan is one of the slaves of Mr. USA, Washington. They have to do whatever they tell them. You know, we should not be surprised of all these acts. I believe we should start to make more denunciation. That means to create a team that they could go and find and get those evidence and relate it to the manufacturers and the way they smuggle it until the day that they come. Because the logistic of having all those explosives is not easy. They watch all the luggages here and there from all the airports. We cannot see how they get these products coming from the West naturally because they don't produce them in Pakistan. So from there on, we can make a denunciation and make a general education to the whole people that one by one we understand what's happening. Because this is, when we compare this with 14th century ago, the related people, what they did to the Prophet Salawatullah and what they did also to Jesus Christ, these are the updated, high-grade murderers today, that they are developed everywhere and they go wherever they want. And I'm wondering why we don't go and identify where all those explosives are coming from.
Well, it's a very good point. I would only make this point in reply. Nobody has to do what others tell them. I recall very well the Deng Xiaoping's comment when Prince Charles tried to lecture the Chinese leadership on the situation that would exist in Hong Kong after it was returned to China at the end of the unjust treaty that Britain had imposed upon China. And Charles was waxing lyrical, telling the Chinese how they must run Hong Kong after they got it back. And Deng Xiaoping said, "The days when China could be ordered what to do by foreigners is finished. It's over. Nobody tells China what to do. Actually, Nobody even tells India what to do, even though of its own volition, it does many bad things and some good things. So there's no reason why a Pakistani government, a great nation of hundreds of millions of hard-working, devoutly Muslim people overwhelmingly, there is no reason at all why they should be told what to do by the United States. It's their governments that choose to do that. And that's what's got to change. Thanks for the call in Switzerland. Let's go to Pakistan. To Paris, to Jamshid, to talk about Pakistan. Jamshid, go ahead. Jamshid, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Go ahead then. Speak away.
Yes, sir. Assalamu alaikum and hello, sir. George Galloway.
Thank you, sir. Go on.
Salam, sir. It's the first time I call you. We have no man like you in Pakistan. So I vote for you as a president of Islamic Republic of Pakistan.
Thank you very much.
This is really, I feel very sad for my Pakistanis. They are suffering. So beautiful country, Pakistan.
Yes, indeed it is.
The fifth country in the world. We have everything to be happy. I just compare with Palestine, the poor people. They have nothing. They are suffering. We have everything. We are suffering. Why? What is wrong with Pakistan? What is doing English elites in Pakistan? They are holder of very long and large diplomas. What is wrong with Pakistan? What they are doing people with us? What they are doing with our sisters, our mothers, our children, our old people? We are more than 200 million strong people, very good educated people, and language is compulsory English. They are making trouble for us. What happened with this Pakistan? 1971, they kill us, they destroy our country, this English elite, and they blame other people. What is going wrong with West Pakistan, Pakistan of today? They are killing our brothers, our sisters, engineers, they are destroying us. They are blaming to Shia Muslims. I am a Sunni Muslim. I love Islamic Republic of Iran. I am 62 years old. I have been in Iran. I know they are very excellent people. And we are lucky to have this great neighbor. Pakistan is far from Iran. Pakistan is going where? Washington, London. I am not against anybody, of course not our English friends. But they are exploiting English in Pakistan. They are killing us.
Well, Jamshid, I'm almost speechless in attempting to reply to the passionate truth that you have stated to us. And the comparison you make with Iran is a very good one. Nobody tells Iran what to do. Iran is developing peaceful nuclear power, but Pakistan already has nuclear power. Pakistan has hundreds of millions of strong, educated, English-speaking people. It has everything. God was good to Pakistan. The problem is the organization and the politics and the security and all the rest of it. And the foreigners, many foreigners, have to be blamed for their perfidious role in Pakistan. That's true. But in the end, the Pakistani people will have to become the masters of their own destiny. And if every Pakistani had the spirit that you have, then that could be done. Jamshid, I'm touched. Thank you very much for that call. Zulfikar is in the United States, in Texas. Zulfikar in Texas, how can Pakistan protect its people?
Hello, Mr. Galloway. Good talking to you again, sir.
And to you, sir. Go ahead.
Mr. George, I would like to take this opportunity and say something regarding Shia killings in Pakistan.
Yeah.
I'm from Larkana myself. I have grew up there in Larkana city.
I was there just a few months ago. Wonderful place.
Yes, sir. And I have lived with this tyranny and horror what Pakistan is going through. This is conspiracy has created in worldwide wherever Shia exists, and the Shia is literally Saudi Arabia and Bahrain, Qatar. These Gulf states are equally involved in this killing, sir.
I have no doubt that Saudi Arabia is involved in encouraging the murder of Shiites in many parts of the world, including in their own country. And that is an important part of this picture. The fanaticism and extremism for which they pay and that they preach, though don't practice. Don't imagine that the Saudi oligarchy in London this evening are living like Wahhabis. If they did live like Wahhabis, we'd be better off. They're here for the casinos and the bordellos, the gambling, the drinking, and every other kind of sin. But they preach this sectarian extremism. I have no doubt about that. But that's not the full picture. Separatism's in this picture, in Balochistan. And this madness that took place in Islamabad at the vegetable market, that wasn't sectarian in intent, but it was nonetheless absolutely maniacal. Last call in the UK from Abdul. Welcome, Abdul. You're on the air. Abdul?
Hello, hello, George. Yeah.
Go ahead, sir. You're on the air. You're the last caller.
Yes, now coming to Pakistan, even I'm worried. As you're aware, Pakistan was created in 1947. India was partitioned mainly because the Indian Muslims in North India were feeling very threatened by the Hindu mobs which were rioting and killing them. So they came over to Pakistan, but again, they were discriminated against. I think it's only Imran Khan who has spoken, that if you discriminate these people, who's going to provide the leadership? But it descended into regionalism and all that. Next is the landlords, Now, these people were just rent collectors under the Mughal, the great Mughal in Delhi. But when the British took over, they made them owners of the land, like the squires, in order to get their loyalty. And they proved their loyalty like during the mutiny of the Indian Army in 1857 or the War of Independence, whatever you call it. And now in India and Bangladesh, they've been able to remove these landlords, but in Pakistan they haven't been able to do. And the first Prime Minister of Pakistan who tried to do so was assassinated by a professional assassin.
Well, I'm glad that you brought that up, and I've only seconds left to make this point. Pakistan had a leader, Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, who wanted to tackle these landlords, even though he came from a line of landlords himself. He wanted to make Pakistan allied with China, not with the United States, thousands of miles away. And he was murdered by the rope in a coup d'etat by this Zia-ul-Haq. I spit upon his name. And Pakistan lost something very precious in Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, and they might have been different today if they hadn't. God willing, next week.
Hello, if you comment your name and the place with that number, and just make sure that your television volume set to 0. So, 0. Can you spell your name for me? Yeah, I know. You redirect me through the phone number, and then we'll call you back. Comment, and then can I have your telephone number?